Hola and welcome. I am saying hola today because we are hanging out with a travel friend and we're going to talk a little bit about Mexico and other places that speak Spanish, I think, and I hope, with our friend Noah. Noah is a world traveler and experience creator on a quest to help people realize their boldest dreams and leverage their potential to the fullest. He's a published author, visual artist, filmmaker, and the founder of The Big Possible, which is a podcast and social club that hosts retreats and exotic destinations all around the world. And today he is beaming in from Costa Rica to hang out with us here on the show. So welcome, Noah.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so good to be here, Hannah. Thanks for sharing the time and the space. And yeah, it's just great to talk to a fellow nomad and all about the stories.
Totally. Yes. And I know I'm glad we started recording because I felt like we could have just started like chit chatting about Merida and Costa Rica and retreats and business ideas. It's always amazing to connect with like-minded folks who are not just dreaming and meditating on the beach. Yes. And building that, that business model and thinking about ways to make this a long-term thing, not just a sabbatical or a getaway. I'm going to go work on the beach and find myself, but to be yourself and have this be part of your longer, like how you do life. So tell us a little bit about how you realized you wanted to do life in this way and really what got you started in the travel, nomading, dream life, if you will. Where did it start?
Wow. That's such an interesting question, but I think it really comes down to connection and the ability to leverage connections to do bigger things with your life. I think that aspect is amplified so much when you're out on the road, when you're out traveling. There's a lot of tricks and challenges that show up as you're adventuring. You're going to have to worry about logistics. You're going to have to worry about, learning the new language, the customs, the culture, finding a laundromat. There's all those little logistical things. But I think the strongest thing is that synchronicity that happens when you're open to explore an adventure. You start to meet interesting people. And ultimately, I think I was kind of missing that when I was holed up in the pandemic in my little, apartment in LA, and I'm looking at the way that my life is designed, and what I was craving more than anything was connections to start new businesses, connections to grow. And I was writing out the tail end of 5 years in a corporate job and trying to figure out how I would get out of that and what the next step would be. So I tinkered with art. I tinkered with starting a coaching business, publishing a book. And ultimately, what was calling me was the desire to get out and build a forum, a club in which I could bring people together. And fast forward, we're sitting here at the end of the pandemic, and I'm like, why am I paying all this money to have this place? My goal of having a nice place was to be able to throw dinner parties, bring people together, and start networking with professionals and growing an entrepreneur community. But I realized that wasn't going to happen during the pandemic in LA. And I said, okay, why not pay the same amount of money that I'm paying on rent and instead use that to get a plane ticket, use that to get an Airbnb rental in an exotic destination. I could be footsteps from the beach, pay less money, and have adventure like baked into my daily life. And at first, it's difficult. You feel the pull of the water. You feel the margaritas calling, and you're like, all right, how do I stay focused? How do I stay disciplined? But eventually, that regiment starts to kick in, and you're able to get more stuff done. At least for me, I hear there's some people that struggle with that, but I'm able to get more stuff done in a few hours in the morning, and then have the rest of the day to go out and make connections. Be at a cool bar where I'm going to meet other expats and travelers. Start sending emails and leverage this opportunity to podcast, to do sending cold emails. For example, we were chatting about how I'm just making all these connections just from emailing people that I want to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And that adventure has given me more courage to actually expand actively rather than sitting passively in a room. The momentum, the movement, the novelty, the always seeing something new, that's really what has been fueling me for the last year as I'm really diving into this, embracing this new lifestyle.
You are preaching to the choir, my friend. Like, first of all, I just need to go back to this idea that connection is what you were really craving when you were in a corporate space or in your apartment in LA. I was the same exact way. I was 20 something in my apartment in Madison, Wisconsin, kind of on my healing journey from an eating disorder, but really feeling like I needed to figure out something more to do. Okay, if I can't just work out and obsess about food and go to my day job, I needed something more to do. And when I started traveling, I remember the moment I was on a bus in Kenya when I wrote down, I'm not independent. I always really thought that and really prided myself on independent. I am interdependent. And it's kind of like one of those things that you see on a tote bag, like be the change you wish to see in the world. Like, yeah, obviously that makes sense, but you know, that just like embodiment or that knowing that it's like, it's not about me and like me figuring out this thing and but like this interconnectedness of the world. And this is still a really fine balancing act for me. I consider myself introverted and still, you know, independent, and I like my alone time. But being an expat now, like you said, it's this heightened awareness that we really are all in this together. And the energy in Mexico is so different than I was living in San Francisco and Northern California. So similar to kind of that, you know, individualistic idea, especially in some places of California, that it's a breath of fresh air to be able to be honest about, you know, I need my neighbor to help this. I don't know the language. Let's make new friends because we're all in this new environment. I so relate to that. And I think some of our free souls or wild spirits or whatever you want to call yourself that listen to the show can really relate to that. And I just wanted to like underscore that permission slip, as I often like to say, that it's not just you feeling crazy. You're not alone. Getting out into the world, out of your head is such a powerful way to start to see how things actually happen, and people always make things happen. So okay, some of my just like cliches that maybe I'll make tote bags with, I wanted to just like underscore, because all the cliches are true, and everything that you're sharing really resonates with me. But I think this, like the temptation piece is something I want to talk about. You mentioned like margaritas on the beach being right there, and I could just work for 2 hours in the morning and never come back to it. So tell me how you keep the intentionality in those connections, in those conversations, in those emails, because it's really easy to just go to the beach and talk about what happened at the Oscars last night and not, you know, get to the meaningful, let's make amazing stuff together. So what are tips for, you know, tapping into the collective and leveraging that opportunity that you shared?
Yeah, it's so powerful. And really, it dials down to setting your priorities and being aligned with a purpose that's bigger than yourself. So that's the tricky part, right? Sometimes people don't know what that purpose is, but once you can find a motivation that's fun and exciting and it lights you up, then it's so much easier to say, okay, I can choose the short-term pleasure of, you know, going out, hanging out with friends, or I can choose to invest my time into things that are going to drive this bigger purpose forward. And an easy way to find that is to think about the things that you love to do that you can also make money with eventually, right? You don't have to be able to do that right now, but it's so much more practical. This is something that I pulled from my coach. It's so much more practical to get good at something you love than it is to try to love something you're good at and you think you should be doing. And that's a trap that so many of us get caught in, that we have to do the stuff that we're good at even though we don't like it. And what happens then is the temptations are going to show up, and it's going to be so much easier to give into those, because ultimately this thing that you're supposed to be doing isn't aligned with what your heart's telling you. And it's kind of like cliche, but you know, again, it's just if your purpose is tied with something that lights you up and that fulfills you, then that's great. And you don't even have to create the purpose from scratch. You can borrow something from someone else. You find a business model that someone else is doing and put your own spin on it. You look at what I'm doing. I'm doing retreats for people. It's like, it's so cliche. People are doing that all over the world, but adding my special sauce, adding my recipe plus my background plus my experience, that gives it a fire, that gives it a color that's unique. And the more you keep painting with your brush, the more vivid that color is going to become, and the more invested you're going to get on that project.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about showing up every day a little bit and then rewarding yourself by, hey, you know what? I put 2 hours into this. Cool. I built one page on the website. And the more you do it, the more you start to love it. And then the more you do it, you also get better at it, which then creates this self-fulfilling prophecy of, I'm going to choose this over Netflix. I'm going to choose this over the other stuff.
Yeah.
But also, it's important to not underutilize anything, especially when you're out on the road. It's important to reward yourself with fun activities that are culturally inspiring, that are going to give you perspective. So take a salsa class, go out and do a boat tour. Like today, after this interview, we're going to go out and we're going to do some snorkeling. So it's these little rewards are going to fill you up and light you up so that you're energized to be able to tackle the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what's just like ringing in my ears is action. Action brings clarity. And you, again, getting out of your head and into the world, into conversations, I'm going to just do 2 hours today, right? I don't have to build the whole empire today, but I'm going to commit 2 hours. I'm going to show up for it. And I see, especially with a new program or a new idea, so many people love the brainstorm phase, right? Like, let's like hang out and talk about this idea. And then maybe you have one friend who's like really good at taking notes, but even within our own selves, people tend to really like that brainstorm phase because there isn't responsibility, there isn't accountability, there's very low risk. You can just say anything silly and talk about it. So you mentioned like time blocks and then giving yourself a celebration. I think that's one way that works really well for me personally. But give us a couple other, ways. Like, for example, one of the things I did when building my coaching business 5-6 years ago was the game of 5, where I would just like reach out to 5 people a day, whether I knew them or I didn't know them. I would just play the game of like, make 5 connections today, Hanna. And I learned so much from those conversations, and that action brought a lot of clarity for me. But do you have any other games or just like quick tips of getting us out of the thinking about it to the being about it, doing it phase?
Yeah, and I'm gonna actually I'm gonna use a similar thing from what you've got, because accountability is really the biggest thing. And if we can get people excited about what we're doing, it's gonna hold us accountable. So then if you get people invested in a project, then you're gonna want to deliver for them, because, hey, how's that project going? Keep me updated on it. What's new with the project? And as you start gaining supporters, it's now no longer about you. It's about how do you show up for your community. And so I would put at the beginning, as you're coming out of brainstorm phase, put so much focus into your building that community. And that could be as simple as, like you said, it's all about the outreach. And for outreach, there's a lot of things that you can do, but start with who you are, what you are, what's the value for them, and then ask them to do something. Reply back if you're interested. Keep it short and sweet. And if you send, 5 a day is just the bare minimum, but if you're getting 5 a day, that's incredible. And again, I love how you said it, the game, because it's about, how do we play together? How do we share this gift together?
And we quit corporate. We're not trying to like get into another task list here, right? Like that energy of play that you've mentioned a few times, I think is another thing for listeners to note. Like, make it fun, make it light, make it a reward. Like you said, gamifying it has been really powerful for me. To Eat the Frog. Have you read that book?
Yes.
Eat the frog and then get on with your day. So let's zero in even more on this outreach piece. You kind of hinted at, we were joking about cold emails before we hit record here, and there's so much bad vibes out there with like cold calling or cold DMing. And I have lots of ideas on how to do that in a not cold way, but I'd love to talk with you a little bit more about how you're leveraging that outreach. So you gave that simple template, you know, start with who you are and share the value for them, then make a really clear ask, call to action. But if you were to, you know, think to yourself 6 months ago or a year ago, what are the top tips you would give yourself when it comes to hitting the sidewalk and starting the outreach game? How do we play? What do you recommend?
Yeah. So definitely it comes down to, so you can be smart about it. So you've got all your contacts in your phone. They're all ripe for DMing, and you know, choose 10 a day to send a DM to. That, you know, again, that was how I found when I got the first idea to start this retreat business. That was where I got the validation that this was a good idea. So send an email that shows how passionate, or send a text that just shows how passionate you are about the idea. Start with 10 people, expand to 20 the next day, and you should get some positive signal. You know, eventually that's going to be like, great. Every time you get a positive signal, add that to your data pool. So don't stop until you have enough data that's going to determine whether or not your idea is going to be viable or not. So many people give up before they actually see the results. But if you start to listen to the data, so okay, so I sent 10 text messages. I got one person that replied, "Holy cow, this is incredible. I've been waiting for something like this." That was a signal that there's a market for this. Okay, now let's just start doing the math. I just need to send, you know, maybe 100 more text messages to get 10 people. Well, it ended up being a lot more than that, but that's the idea. Once you start sending enough messages, once you start sending 100, 1,000 people, then you're able to get enough data that says, okay, so if I want 20 people to buy my product, that just means I need to send a message to 2,000 people. How do you do that? Well, first you've got your
Okay, wait. Before we go there, I just like, this needs to be like bolded, highlighted, everyone. Like Noah did not say, find your funnel and perfect it. He did not say, have 5 website pages. Like, real people are how your idea comes to real life. Like I'm a little bit on a thing today here, Noah, about all of these shiny objects and people asking me about funnels and ads, and like there's a place in the world for it. But so many of us forget, underutilize real people, real connections. If you want 20 people to come to your thing, find 2,000 to talk to. And you could put money in the Facebook machine to do that. Yeah. You've got 2,000 people on your Facebook page right now that haven't heard from you in 5 years as well. I'm going to guess. Thank you for saying that.
Yes. And definitely, you know, coming from a marketing background and like running ads for my coaching business, you know, definitely don't advise launching anything in paid ads until you have a marketing engine in place, until you know your marketing's working. You're just gonna waste money. It's really sad, but it's very true. I just had the privilege of having Andrew Miller speak at he's a expert, growth marketing expert, and he spoke at the last retreat, and that was basically the sum of his talk. Was there's so much that you can do with direct outreach. Start with that because that's the low-hanging fruit. And then once you have traction, once you have momentum, then you can start adding all the fancy bells and whistles. But you need to get that momentum going, and then you know you can use the testimonials from people that are existing customers to now increase the odds of your funnel converting. But let's start with the direct outreach. That's just the lowest hanging fruit. It's something that you don't need to have a marketing degree to do this. You know, great copy is going to go a long way, but you can also just pour your heart out, be truthful, be raw, be real, be passionate, and there's no way that and always come from that place of I'm giving a gift. I'm giving value. And whether or not that person's ready to receive your value right now, they'll let you know. If they're not ready, that doesn't mean that your idea is bad. That just means that they're not ready.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep reaching out until you get enough data to validate that, all right, now I'm ready to scale this thing.
And keep going, because the other thing that happens, Noah, from my like woo woo side, is the universe sees you taking action, moving in a direction, saying, I am ready. This is where I'm going. And it's amazing to me how still I'll play the 5 outreaches game a day. You get me? Or I'll, launch something, and the results oftentimes come from there, but still so many times the results come from weird, unexpected. I haven't thought of that person in 3 years. I didn't even reach out to them, but like this like synchronicity game as well is supercharged when you do exactly what Noah's talking about.
So I have a story around that, and actually, there's a guest that's on my show, Ignacio Oriamuno, who he just embodies this. His whole life is just one great adventure of taking risks, and then as he takes the risk, someone's going to show up and help him out. But I was 10 years ago, I was doing a backpacking trip across Japan, and I got to this point where it was really hard. I was going to give up. I was on foot from Kyoto to Tokyo. I just determined to walk 500 kilometers and like make a little video documentary about it. And like I was not prepared. I was just so naive, thinking that tall blonde guy that speaks Japanese, I'll be able to walk into any little village and some family's going to be like, wow, let's come stay with me, let's talk stories, I'm going to cook you dinner. It was not. Sadly, reality was not quite that kind. But what happened was, these moments where I was literally about to give up, the only thing I could really do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Every step was just, let's just keep going forward. Let's just keep going forward. 3 days of rain, 3 days of getting my clothes soaked, having to sleep in like abandoned karaoke parlors because I couldn't find anywhere to sleep. And then showing up one day, I came over this hill and I saw this beautiful town with like blue slate tiles, white plaster walls, the smell of incense in the air, and people walking around yukatas. And I found this traveler's inn called Ishigakiya-san. And so I showed up at Ishigakiya's, and that was the first time I found the people that were meant to show up to give me the courage to keep going. Right when I was about to give up, fate just gave me somebody to give me enough inspiration to keep going. We were singing songs, playing the shamisen, drinking sake until like 3 a.m. And, I told them about how I was thinking about giving up. And they said, please, for our sake, for just this courage, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for you to just do this. No one asked you to walk across Japan, but you're doing it. And you're going to remember this for years to come. Just keep on the road, keep on the journey. And one of the songs we were singing, it goes, the words of tabi ga ina, which basically just means, isn't the journey nice? Isn't the journey nice? And that's, I think, just in terms of remembering synchronicity, I wear a coin around my neck usually that just is from that inn. That just reminds me that no matter how tough things get, as long as you keep going, the people that you need are going to show up and give you the support you need.
Isn't the journey nice? And I love how travel and entrepreneurship is just one big metaphor for personal development. Like you and I both just kind of take life and business and everything by the horns, and it's like, I'm going to feel it, I'm going to live it. And sometimes that means that, you feel like giving up, or there are those hard moments. But in the grand scheme of things, I always say, like, I chose this. I chose this hard. I chose this afternoon, and knowing that it's all kind of part of the package that I chose of how to do life and work. So speaking of blending entrepreneurship and travel, let's fast forward to the retreats, because it feels like everything you just talked about of like marketing from the heart and doing authentic outreach and leveraging real connection and community is the through line of how you do retreats. So fill us in on how that's working. And yeah, I think it's a natural segue.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I think I'll start with just we literally, I'm on the high of my life right now because we just finished the first retreat in Mexico. It was in Puerto Vallarta, and I had some ideas that this was going to be really powerful. This was going to be really motivating for a lot of people. We're going to build some community. We're going to build some connections, but I had no idea how vividly beautiful the experience would be when you bring 12 brilliant minds together with these. You set the stage for connection. You give them the opportunity to be on an adventure together, to pamper them with great food and incredible luxury accommodations, and speakers who are going to share some insights, and they can actively talk about how do I get to my business goals. But I think what really made this so powerful was not the luxury stuff, was not the food, was not all of the adventure, but it was really about the access to the maps that everyone charted on their own adventures. And so as you're on your own, like pioneering to the frontier of what you think possible, as you're just going through that journey, if you can shortcut that experience by sharing maps with fellow pioneers, how much more easy will life be? And that's I think the real beauty that we discovered on this experience is that here I am up until this point building this on my own in a silo. I've trusted in the universe that the people were going to show up that are going to help me, but I had no idea how much help I would be getting. So, Darren Darnborough, one of the speakers at the event, he's been a good friend of mine who I also met through a cold email. And so for years we've watched each other grow through our respective businesses. And when I asked him to come speak, he was so excited, showed up, and the thing he really touched on was how to leverage sponsors for an event like this. How to build community into your product, and just the light bulbs going off from these. And then the feedback he gave. I would have had to pay 20 grand for a consultant to just get the ideas that came from sharing space together. And that's just one example. Multiply that by 12. Everybody there, it was, plus all the speakers. It's mind blowing how effective intentional time with a community can be for showing you the right path in your business, for showing you the right path in your personal life, and also to feel that you're not alone. So that was really the highlight for me from the experience, was all of these nuggets of wisdom from everyone else, plus an army of supporters now who, I'm like, hey, I need this. I send an email and I've got 10 people responding with advice, with tips, with recommendations that all come from a place of love and support.
Yeah.
So
that full circle from being, independent, I have this idea, I'm gonna do this thing, to that we're interconnected. And when we can share our zone of genius, like it sounds like speakers came and shared what's working for them, what they're really great at. And then you got to borrow genius from people who are in the same room. Like, it's so crazy to me because this is like the most ancient form of building things coming together in the same room. It's the most ancient form of marketing, leveraging our relationships. And this is like groundbreaking, Noah. Like, people are going to be like, what do you mean it's not a hashtag, right? It's like making your network work for you, right? Like support you along the way. So tell me a little bit about who's right to attend your retreats, like who should be in the room for future retreats, because I think a lot of our people are probably vibing with you so far.
Yeah, so we've got coming up, we've got Morocco coming up in May. There's also going to be Costa Rica in July, and then Mykonos in September. There's a possibility I'll add a US date as well sometime in there, and then Japan in November. So those are on the calendar. Booking some incredible speakers for all of these events, which you can obviously find that out on the website. But the types of people that will really benefit from this, if they're coming from that motivation of seeking connection as a paramount kind of motivation, then they'll fit right in. We have sort of an eclectic, diverse set of minds. So we have established entrepreneurs who are making 7 figures in their business, very successful, also established entertainment folks. So we've had like Jimmy Akingbola, he used to start up that show Bel Air there. Other startup founders as well. So there's this kind of tier there of brilliant minds who are doing incredible things already, you know, making a lot of progress in their business. And what they're looking for is connection and different perspective. There's also a group of people who are working at amazing companies. So if you know, doing things that maybe they don't want to leave their job, maybe they're already living a remote life and they're challenged appropriately. So you've got like developers for Coinbase that show up. You know, so if you're in an organization and you're just looking for a creative outlet, a way to expand your horizons and your community, then this is also, you know, a fit for you. And I think the other spectrum is the solopreneurs, especially. I think this is really powerful for you. If you're a solopreneur or somebody who is a founder that maybe on the early stage of your business, but you know, you're at a point where you're able to invest in yourself and look for ways to shortcut that learning curve and start to build that community and increase leverage in the day-to-day, then this is a home run for you. So that's just the kind of crowd. Obviously, everyone is coming people first and connection first. Everyone's got, like I said, a diverse background from artists to entrepreneurs and everywhere in between. And so, yeah, I think that's basically the types of people that will really resonate with this.
Yes. And for those resonating, before we run over to Google Flights and start packing our bags, where do we go from here? Like, what's the next step if we're interested in learning more or, yeah, joining the movement, if you will?
Oh, I love it. So everything's on thebigpossible.com. We've got feedback from past guests there. We've got the upcoming retreats, my podcast, The Big Possible, where I interview awesome people just doing cool things. And then we have, I think that's it. Yeah, everything's on the site, The Big Possible.
The Big Possible, we will make sure that we have links to that so you can stay connected with Noah, maybe even send him a cold email and get into a real conversation, because I always like to say we are real people. And I always love hearing from you. And I feel like Noah would love to hear from you as well if you're interested in what your big possible thing is. And who knows, maybe we'll see you somewhere around the world near a beach one of these days, Noah. Listeners,
I'll come for that margarita.
Yeah, after our 2 hours, we'll make a plan, right? All right, listeners, that's the plan for today. Continue taking those actions to make your dream life and business your real life. And I'll be back next week with another inspiring guest to keep us moving forward.